It is kind of, I guess, for a lot of people, just getting back from work or
Yeah. So usually we do it on Saturday. So if you remember when I reached out to you, it was for a Saturday evening. But then that's the thing. We try to have at least one event per month, and that's the kind of larger idea. So if not Saturday, we try to have it on some other day. Yeah. So Tuesday it is. So it's pretty fine. Yeah.
I think for MSR now every day is Saturday, no?
not yet.
Okay.
Krishna, I've had 5 meetings today.
Okay.
Oh my
Pretty
God,
cool.
your vacation is not vacation.
Uh,
This is a very popular saying of how you say from the person. I think MSR and Tihab are like that. He's not supposed to be taking 5 meetings a day.
yeah.
Oh shoot, all of this is recorded, no? Please
Yeah,
cut
everything is
this when
recorded.
you put
So,
it up on YouTube.
Can,
all
candid,
right, all right.
candid conversations.
So this is also live streamed, by the way. So I can't cut it. It's already being live
Oh my
streamed. So it's already going there. Yeah.
I will
No, but all
pause
right. We will
my.
wait. Yeah. We will wait another 3 minutes. By 8:35 we will begin because people are still joining. Yeah. And also it's Tuesday, so we can give like 5 minutes kind of
Yeah,
a leverage.
how's how are things in Bombay weather-wise?
Neither, by the way. Vaibhav is not even in India.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Sao Paulo. I think
Oh, okay.
Jijo is in Bombay. He can tell you. He can tell about Bombay. Yeah.
Very bad. The weather is very bad over here. Not to say anything.
Well. I'm in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, it's pretty nice. Yeah. Now it's a good weather. Yeah.
Diwali time now in Mumbai, and we are having rains every
Oh,
evening after 6 o'clock.
yeah. Well, I think in New
That,
Delhi NCR region it's worse. Yeah.
is that usual for this time of the year, or is this some
No,
more
no.
manifestation of climate change?
Yeah, it might be using that.
All right. So one more minute to go, and I'll start, and people can still keep joining. Not a problem. So yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on your time zone. Welcome to the 15th session of the Entrepreneurship Gyan, TEG, as we have been calling it. We started last year in July. We had the first session, inaugural session, and that was also with Hyderabad chapter. We had Ramanan Ramanathan ji, the former director and former mission director of Atal Innovation Mission with us, and we had this inaugural session with the Hyderabad chapter. Again, this year, after 1 year, more than 1 year, we are having another event with the Hyderabad chapter. And this time we have MSR, popularly known as MSR, from T-Hub with us. And so just a basic idea about the Entrepreneurship Gyan. The idea is the same, to have speakers like Ramananji and we had like Professor Saraswati. We have today MSR, to people from the policy world, people from the academic world, people from the practice world, to give their and share their knowledge with the young entrepreneurs budding entrepreneurs, but also it's an idea to create a platform, a collaborative platform of learning where people can share their experiences, their ideas. They can look forward to some kind of help. And we have an active WhatsApp community, and there people are actually doing all of those things. We are also planning for an in-person event somewhere down the line, probably next year, is a possibility. But largely the idea is that we carry forward these conversations on startups and entrepreneurship, and we keep moving ahead. So we try to have a good balance between the paper, the practice, and the policy, as I try to call it, and I've managed to do it. So I'm not 100% sure in which of those dimensions MSR would fit, but what I can understand, largely the practice and the policy side of it, he would be fitting a lot more than the academic side. Although, maybe he has some gyan on that aspect as well, given the fact that teaching startups and teaching entrepreneurship is it's more of a practice thing and not that much of an academic thing per se. With that, I won't waste more time. I would invite ITBA director and my colleague and friend Avishma to formally introduce MSR, and then we will move ahead from there. To you, Avishma.
Okay, so how do I introduce MSR? I think everybody has the profile. He's known for his latest role as the CEO of T-Hub, now freshly out, by the way, if you haven't seen the update from him. He's 1 week old ex-CEO. While he may be known for that, he has been laying and paving the road for over 3 decades now. He's had major career shifts from IT to being an entrepreneur, and now moving on to like an ecosystem builder role. Since today's session is focused on entrepreneurship, maybe I'll bring the attention back to T-Hub. So T-Hub has become the attraction point for many stakeholders, entrepreneurs, of course, and even investors and mentors, and all for the right reasons. So my personal connect with T-Hub is when I was part of the PwC innovation team. We used to work out of T-Hub. This was when T-Hub was just a few months old, actually, before MSR came on board T-Hub. So we were there for almost 4 years. And the place was so vibrant, just working out of there, stepping in every day, looking at so many entrepreneurs around you with such enthusiastic, passionate goals that they have. That gave our team so much motivation, coming from this PwC sort of a setup, which you would expect to be more rigid. It helped us build our own programs also a lot better, especially working in T-Hub and with T-Hub as well. And, I think once MSR got on board, by then T-Hub has also evolved to a point where the challenge has got stepped up, because that time when I was there, we were still leasing. T-Hub was still leasing a building from IIIT Hyderabad, and now it's a 5 times more space, its own space. And with just the larger space came a lot more focus and effort and dedication that was required. And the impact has also been the same because of MSR and his team, taking up the challenge and putting everything forefront, and still T-Hub being one of the central focus points where even the national level teams could come and learn from. So I think with that, I will hand over this virtual mic to MSR. MSR, thank you so much for taking the time, taking this time to spend with us and to share your lessons with us and your valuable time. Over to you, MSR.
Thank you. Thank you, Avishma. Thank you, Avishma, and thank you, Vaibhav, for having me. So first of all, let me start with, this real honor and privilege to speak to IITB Alumni Association. First of all, I'll start with, I was telling Avishma, I wasn't good enough to get into any of the IITs, but, now giving gyan to a bunch of people from IIT makes me feel super happy, right? So I'll start with that. All of you are really, really, sharp people. And what I'm going to do is, I thought I'll structure this in possibly 2 parts. Give you a little bit, very quick overview of my background. I'm probably the oldest person on the call. I've been working for over 37 years now, 37 and a half years. If you want to be statistically precise, probably older than many of you have been on Earth itself, right? And I've had a career in 3 parts. First 12 years, I worked for others. Then had 2 stints as an entrepreneur with reasonable success. Was able to, I think one validation for an entrepreneur is when you build a business which somebody decides to buy, that means somebody is seeing value in what you've built. So I've been lucky enough to have gone through twice, not outsized returns like many of the unicorns, but decent. And then for the last 5 years, I've been working on building entrepreneurship ecosystems. The first stint was for about 18 months with an entity where we were trying to solve issues relating to the micro, small, and medium enterprises in India. We have about 60 million plus of them, and they're really, in terms of they are not large enough, they're not too small, they don't really get the attention they should. They're a large job creator, etc. So did some interesting work there. And for the last 3 years, was involved in building out T-Hub, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm assuming, I'm taking the liberty of assuming that I see about, excluding Avishma and Professor Vaibhav, I see about 30, 31 people on the call. So I'm assuming many of you may be either already doing entrepreneurship or contemplating becoming an entrepreneur. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to try and talk to you, and some of this is what I call very homespun. You may not find this in any classic textbook on entrepreneurship. This is reality, as I said, having both built a couple of things myself and having worked with several hundreds of entrepreneurs. I've tried to distill a lot of that essence of a lot of that into if you are thinking about building a startup, I thought I'll leave you with a few pointers which you can potentially use and maybe go out and build. And I'll tell you the reason why I think India needs a lot many more of us to become entrepreneurs, right? Fundamentally, we are a country with 1.4 billion people. Everyone talks about demographic dividend. 28. Average age of medium in age is 28, etc. But clearly, one challenge which all of us know, and I think this year probably it's also impacted some of the IITs as well, is job creation is not happening as rapidly as it should, right? And one way that India can solve the jobs issue, where we are typically adding close to about 12 million young people to the workforce every year, is through entrepreneurship, right? I think there's a finite capacity in terms of the number of jobs which can be created either in government or in the private sector, right, by large businesses and by government. So clearly, I think what we need now is a strategy where, it's almost like saying, let 1,000 flowers bloom, and we need many more entrepreneurs to come up, right? So while we have on paper, we have registered some 120,000 plus startups, according to DPIIT, about 110 or 120, depending on which line of thought you subscribe to, unicorns. But clearly, in India needs many more entrepreneurs, right? So what I'm going to do is try and cover very quickly a few thoughts on if you are thinking of building a startup, what are some of the issues which or what are the, let's say, it's like trying to build a recipe, right? Trying to build a meal. So what are all the critical elements one needs to put together to be able to build a sustainable, scalable, startup, and to try and, we also are aware that mortality rate in startups is high. It's typically only about 1 in 10 startups survives and goes on to build a scalable business. So how do you, reduce those odds and figure out how you can make, based on my learnings, my experience, and also, talking to so many hundreds of entrepreneurs, I've tried to put some thoughts together. And then, of course, we'll try and, I'm not sure this format allows for a lot of interaction while I'm talking, but I'm happy to take questions. So we'll keep the slides I have I didn't want you guys to, die due to death by PowerPoint, right? So I've tried to limit the number of slides I'm going to use. And I've also taken a leaf out of some of you may have seen, the best presentation videos are actually made by Apple. And one of the things they talk about when you look at, Apple, the number of things they put on a slide is minimal. It's almost, you might call it minimalistic, right? And that's what I've tried to do. So let me just quickly jump to the PowerPoint, which I'll kind of walk you through. I hope you can you just let me know if you can see this?
Yeah, we can see. Please go ahead.
So I'm going to talk a little bit. It's now 8:46, so I'm assuming I can talk till about 9:15 maybe, or thereabouts.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, perfect.
And after that, of course, we'll open it up for Q&A, right? So a few thoughts about what makes, somebody might ask you, what's the secret sauce for you to be able to go out and build a startup, right? So this is a question which I get asked so many times in different forums, etc. So I think, first of all, right, any enterprise, be it large, small, or a startup, the first element is about being able to have good people associated with it. Good people, I mean, and I talk about at length about what I mean by good people, not good necessarily only by way of, character, high on morals, high on ethics, high on values. While that is, you might call it almost table stakes. One of India's most revered business leaders sadly passed away a couple of, less than a few weeks, a couple of weeks ago. And I think he emphasized that there is, two things. One is you can build good businesses in India. Second is you can build them based on strong, a strong ethical and moral foundation. So we'll talk a little bit about people. The second thing is, people ask, why do startups fail, right? And one of the reasons which I'll cover, and again in a little more depth, is about first of all, whatever you're building, most of the time, particularly people who come with deep technical backgrounds, like many of you on this call, tend to focus on saying, listen, I have this great idea, and go ahead and start building some stuff. And sometimes, when the rubber hits the road, which is when you go out and start talking to people, customers, and and so on, you'll probably recognize that sometimes the problem you haven't clearly been able to identify what is the problem you're solving, and by deploying whatever solution, product, platform you've built, is it something which is going to make a difference to a customer's life, either who's a consumer, in a B2C business, or in a B2B business, some enterprise type of enterprise, government, defense, whoever, right? Are you building something which people want, right? And I'll cover that in a little bit of length. And the last but not the least is about managing, when you start, most of us will start bootstrap with, own savings, friends, families, etc., right? And then maybe you go on to raise, let's say, an angel round, and then you get into, obviously, go on to potentially raise an institutional round. And what you generally find is that, if you can manage your money well, okay, you are probably well on the way. If you do these three elements, right, which is having a good team. Second is, building something which people are clamoring to buy. So for example, I think I keep looking at, for example, what Apple does, right? Every time they announce a new phone, and I'm sure, I've seen pictures of people standing outside buying it. I mean, they've created an aspiration where there's a bunch of people who are willing to pay, let's say what I consider obscene amounts of money to buy a basic communication device on which you do, let's say, email, calls, and phone, and WhatsApp, right? But they've just been able to create that, right? And then, of course, spend as little money as possible, right? So these are key elements, and I'll dive into this as we go along, right? The first thing, right, I think it starts with the idea, right? And I think one of the things which I tell people is there are different types of businesses, and you don't need, not everyone can be an Elon Musk, right? I mean, who's trying to really, change the world, interplanetary travel, revolutionize the future of mobility, and so on. All of us are not wired that way, and we don't need to be. There are plenty of, if you just think about this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about something which I feel very passionate about is so let's talk about the UN SDG goals. We are all aware there are 17 social development goals in the UN Charter. Things around clean air, clean water, access to healthcare, access to education, access to affordable housing, etc., etc. Right now, many of these are problems which are affect close to, let's say, 5 billion of the 7 billion of us who live on this planet. And you don't necessarily, have to come up, be as revolutionary as, let's say, a Musk or a Jobs or somebody. You just have to figure out what is it that, people are trying to solve, and what is it that you are building, right? Which solves it for them in such a way that it can, you can look at multiple parameters. Can I do it more efficiently? Can I do it more cost effectively? Does it, for example, help reduce cost, increase revenue? Does it help increase productivity, and so on, right? And let's take an example, right? Some of you, would know, all of you know about the IT services part in India, right? It's now almost a $250 billion industry, which has been built over the last 40 years. And if you look at how it all began, they were not doing rocket science, right? They were not doing fundamental core, R&D, etc. Right? They were just writing code and type of thing. But they figured out how to do it efficiently. They figured out how to use, let's say, a follow the sun model, and figure out how you can serve global customers sitting out of India, and figure out how to monetize. So I think the most important thing is you need to have some ideas. Okay. Second is try and figure out a way to build what you're building in such a way that it solves the problem. One of the things which people ask for is how are you different, right? So, for example, all of us who use, let's say, ride-hailing services like, let's say, an Uber and Ola, I would probably say that there are aspects of what happens with those services which are not particularly, nobody's happy, in the sense that the consumer is not happy because of whatever surge pricing, or because of cancellations. Sometimes the driver is not happy because the commission structure is, sometimes they feel unfairly weighted in favor of the company. Sometimes there are delays in payments by the company, and so on. But for you to say, okay, let me go out and build another ride-hailing services, without taking into account that the large incumbents in the space have spent millions and billions of dollars, right? And not still figured out how to make it an economically viable model. That is not practical. Right? So I think just think about this. How can it be different? How will you differentiate? And what is your moat, right? And I think the third element is, I think this is something which every one of us knows. Ideas are cheap. Talk is cheap. It's the doing which is hard, right? So there's always has to be a bias, particularly in those of you who want to be in a startup or want to become founders, etc. I think there will always be a disproportionate focus on execution, as opposed to someone who's just good at ideas, right? So these are, I think, the key elements from an idea standpoint. I'll quickly jump to the people standpoint. Now, doing a startup is certainly not for the faint-hearted, right? It is behind all for example, all the the print media, today's social media, etc. eulogizes all startup founders, etc., etc. But behind all of that, there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of toil. There's a lot of sweat. There's lots of the number of 24/7 you have to pull, etc. So I think the most important thing is whatever you're building, both you as the founding team as well as the initial set of people have to be obsessed. And I think there's a nice Hindi word for it. It's called junoon, right? You have to have junoon if you want to build something lasting, substantial, and scalable, right? And I have a test for for founders which I tell them to use. When you're building your first set of people, right, in a team, let's say 5, 10 people, first set, who really determine the values, the culture, everything else which will happen in your entity as you go forward. Look at somebody and ask yourself, if you were to visualize him as an animal, what it would be. And if you can get more, tigers, lions, cheetahs visualized, as opposed, for example, and I'm not trying to single out rats, right? But as opposed to single out, let's say, a cockroach or a lizard or something. We have more lions and tigers, right? Or even for example, cats and dogs, right? You can, when you look at visualize someone joining your team, if you can get more people who belong to, let's say, the lion tiger category, I think you'll be able to build a successful business. The second thing, which again I talk about, is it's very hard for a single founder to try. There are obviously exceptions. We can talk about so many exceptions here. So let's say in the Indian context, let's say a Bhavesh Agarwal, for example, or Deep Kalra, etc. Right? But in general, it's hard for single founders to cut it because there's just so much going on. Right? There is you have to build product, you have to get it to the market, you have to raise capital, you have to go out and find customers, you have to build a team. Just get sometimes overwhelming. So it is possible that you should start thinking. I mean, if someone asks me what is the right mix, I would say typically between 2 to 4 people who bring a set of complementary capabilities. Somebody is good at tech, somebody is good at fundraising, somebody who's good at going out and selling, etc., is useful. But again, if you have a very large team, and I can only think of 1 or 2 companies, one, for example, would be Mindtree, where they had 9 founders. That's really an exception. But otherwise, you don't want to get into what I call the group photo syndrome, where you have 7 or 8 people, because then making sure that each one stays out of the other person's hair, each one has enough, there are no turf wars, each one has enough room to do what they are good at, etc. And you avoid disputes. And the second element, I think, is let's say if you have 2 to 4 founders, I think the important thing to be cognizant is that you don't want, for example, let's say you decide to start something and you're open 3 people. You don't want those 3 people to be your echo chambers, meaning they shouldn't be, saying, repeating or parroting what you're saying. They should be able to bring in their point of view, which may be different from yours. And the whole ability, learning to agree to disagree in an agreeable way is what really makes for good teams, right? So one piece of advice to any one of you who's thinking of starting something, and that's also actually, for example, you can convince 2 other people to join you in your idea. That itself to me is a vindication of the idea, because you've been able to validate what you are trying to build along with 2 other people and convince them to hitch their wagon to yours and go out and build something substantial, right? And this part is very important, that people ask, why do startups fail? A lot of the times the reason given is that the startup ran out of money. But to me, that is a lagging indicator. The leading indicator why a startup runs out of money is because many times you're building something which people don't want or people don't find enough value in, right? So if you spend a lot of time, either yourself or someone on your team who knows what is it that a user is looking for, chances are you'll become, reasonably successful, right? Now, from a customer sense, right? Again, I'm talking about this repeatedly, which is figure out what your customers want, right? The first few customers could be friends, family, relatives, well-wishers, etc., right? People whom you went to college with, people who are part of your alumni network, etc., etc., right? And obviously the IITB has such a brand, etc., so you'll be able to go out and get a meeting with someone just by saying, listen, I'm also from your alma mater type of thing. But I think get it done quickly, build a prototype very quickly, and refine it based on reactions. Don't wait till you get to the complete finished article. So, for example, even if you get a version 1.0, right, which is, let's say, for example, a little buggy, etc., that's fine because people will understand, right? And you will be, you don't have to wait till you get the, complete finished article, right, before you go out and hit the market. The second thing which I tell, startups is about this chasing elephants versus rabbits, right? And this is important. I'll spend a minute talking about this elephants versus rabbits. So, to bring down an elephant, I don't know how many of you know, there's an operation called KEDA, which is mounted, right? So when you want to tame, for example, a wild elephant, which is, for example, used in the Dasara procession in Mysore, for example, it's a long, complex, drawn-out process, right? There is also a risk to life, for example, if the elephant goes wild, etc. So you have to think through, put lots of strategy behind how you want to build it down. And typically, it is fairly hard. Generally speaking, it's fairly hard to crack a large enterprise customer when you are at a very early stage. Not just because, in spite of the fact that you may have built a compelling solution based on cutting edge technology, etc., but just the process, right? Because so many people in a large company, typically, lots of people, different stakeholders get involved. Each of them have sometimes conflicting agendas, etc., etc. Just getting adoption is not easy. So you have to take a call. On the other hand, you could say, let me go out and collect rabbits. It's easier to go out and collect rabbits. But then sometimes what happens is, if you're not careful, not just in the beginning, but for the rest of the life of your startup, you'll be only chasing rabbits, right? So you have to be able to, decide, somewhere, and there's no magic formula to say when should you start thinking about going after and chasing elephants as opposed to chasing rabbits. But even from personal experience, so for example, the last company which I built and we sold, the first client, was someone who gave us about an 81,000 rupees order, right? And towards the end of my stint before we sold the company to the National Stock Exchange, our average customer size was $1 million, right? So $1,000 to $1 million. So I'm just giving you that as a figure of order of magnitude type of thing. So it's important for you to decide what your strategy should be in terms of how you are going to go out and acquire customers. It's attractive to chase elephants, but it's also very hard to bring it down. So I think you have to just choose between this thing, right? The next one I'm going to talk about is about money, right? I think the most important thing about this thing is you have to learn to be frugal, right? And remember, capital is, whether it's your own capital or capital you raise through a set of angels or from friends, family, or later on institutional round. I think it's important to create a culture of frugality in the beginning. And because, while it appears, when someone writes you, for example, a first check for, let's say, $1 million or, whatever, 10 crores or something, it's so easy to say, okay, let's go out and, build ourselves a fancy office. We are now scaled up, somebody's putting in money, etc. So you think about these and think about whether whatever you're going to, deploy, how is it going to help you from acquiring more customers, building a great product, and building out a great team, right? So those should be your priorities, not some of these peripheral, things like saying, okay, I've now arrived, let me travel by business class or whatever, right? As an example, right? And the last thing which I wanted to talk about is capital allocation. And let me explain this, which is, so for example, let's say you raise, and in the process of raising capital, you might, let's say, for example, raise a couple of million, 4, 5, 10, whatever million, and you have to decide, obviously, during the process of raising the money, whichever investor is going to put in money is going to be asking you, tell me how you're going to use this money, right? So usually the answer we give is some of it is going to go into product development, some of it is going to go into sales and marketing, some of it potentially is going to be in terms of setting up, let's say, an office or a lab or whatever. Just make sure that whatever you put out there, saying 1/3, for example, development, 1/3 for sales and marketing, 1/3 for building out team, you actually follow that to the team. Right? This is where a lot of us tend to get unstuck, that once the money is in, we forget what we've decided earlier from a capital allocation standpoint. And then we, for example, spend a lot of money on sales and marketing and to the detriment of, let's say, product development or, or hiring a team and so on, right? So this is another key element of what I would cover. Let's spend a little bit about the hiring. It's some of us, like to, are driven by this, what I call power syndrome. It's so nice to go out and say, listen, I have 50 people working for me or 500 people working for me. And sometimes you'll find that you don't need 50 actually. You've just hired sometimes ahead of the curve. And, it's almost like a vanity drive sort of thing. So I think just focus on hiring only when absolutely necessary. And also remember the larger, as you start scaling from beyond the first 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, some element of bureaucracy, etc., comes into any, it's the nature of the beast. It happens all the time. So remember that small teams move quickly. And one rule which I have learned at enormous personal cost is many times you feel, okay, listen, for example, I need a head of sales or I need a head of, I need a CTO or whatever, right? You land up, you start getting desperate. So you meet a lot of people. You're not really convinced that the person you've not met a great fit, an ideal fit, but you just go ahead and say, okay, boss, let me get this done because there's pressure from the board saying, when are you hiring your CTO, head of sales, whatever, right? And you go out and hire, and then you repent at leisure, right? So the first rule is, if you are not convinced, don't hire, because 99 times out of 100, your initial, whatever perception, your initial gut feel, hunch is saying that this guy is good, but he's probably not the right, he or she is not the right fit. Invariably, that comes to pass, and then you can repent it at leisure, sort of, right? So I think last slide, I think pretty much. First of all, those of you who want to start, remember that all of us have only one life to live, right? If you have one life to live, go out and make the most of it, right? And I don't think anyone who has built a startup, right, irrespective whether it has been wildly successful or wildly disastrous, will ever regret the ride they've been through. It's full of challenges, sometimes not even daily challenges, right? Sometimes it's full of hourly challenges, right? Somebody, some demo for a customer is not working, and it worked out well when we were testing in the lab. You can have so many scenarios I can think of, many nightmarish, but it is fun, right? And if you want to be successful in your startup, the element I advocate is you should always have fun along the way. Don't necessarily worry about the outcome. The outcome is not always in our hands. Many times, sometimes it happens that you build something great, but it is probably far ahead of time, in terms of the market is not ready, the market is not mature, or you're selling in the wrong market where, for example, in India, there may not be an appetite for what you're building. It may be relevant in other markets, etc. But it's just one life to live. So give it your all. And the last part I always think is what any one of you will learn even in a 2, 3, 4, 5 years stint in a startup is worth at least 2 or 3 times what you learn in a regular 9 to 5 job, right? So for those of you who want to start, get in, enjoy the ride, And as I said, there's an old Chinese saying by a guy called Confucius. I'm sure some of you, would have read some of his works. So he talks about plans are man's, but odds are God's, right? So, we all have plans when we build our startups or when, whatever we do. Sometimes the odds may not, the dice may not roll in our favor. But, the most important thing is to have fun and, enjoy what you're doing. And, anyone who's done a startup will tell you it is a life-changing experience, right? So I'd encourage many of you to contemplate either starting something on your own or at least go out and work in a startup for some time. And I think the amount of learning you'll get is just mind-boggling. Yeah. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I think I've kind of kept to the time. And I'll just spend 1 minute. I think I have 3-4 minutes more. I'll talk a little bit about T-Hub. So what we do at T-Hub, for those of you not familiar with T-Hub, we are located in Hyderabad. Hyderabad is probably better known for biryani, but it is also rapidly becoming a center for tech. And some of the largest campuses of the big, global giants like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Salesforce are in Hyderabad. So we have a thriving entrepreneurship ecosystem. We have now close to 7,000 startups in our state. And T-Hub as an entity is a public-private partnership with the government of Telangana, 3 academic institutions, IIIT, ISB, NALSAR, and 5 corporate partners coming in. So we are set up and run as a Section 8 company. We support 3 things. One is we support startups. So we handhold startups in their journey from zero to a pre-Series A funding round. So we help them. We have a framework in terms of what we do for startups. We call it the 6 M's, the 2 P's. The 6 M's are methodology. Methodology is about programs. So we have programs for idea to prototype, then for go-to-market and product market fit, angel funding, etc. Then we do a lot of work on helping startups with market access, particularly those in the B2B. Third is we help them raise capital. This is third M. So, methodology, mentorship, market access. Mentorship is a big piece. So more than 200 plus mentors who actively, many of them are serial entrepreneurs who want to give back and support up and coming entrepreneurs. So support them. And then, of course, we do a lot of work on motivation mindset, because one of the most challenging things in running a startup is to stay focused. You will have ups and downs, and to stay motivated when it appears that all your friends are working off cushy corporate jobs and you're slogging your back off is not easy. So it's important for you to listen to and to learn from other successful people, also sometimes even not so successful people, because there's a lesson in every startup. Why is it succeeding or why is it not doing well? So, and then of course help them with talent or manpower. So those are the 6 M's: methodology, market access, money, motivation, mindset, mentorship, and then market access, and then partnerships. So a set of resources like accounting, legal, tax, plus all the cloud companies, etc. And then policy support. So those are what we do for a startup. Of course, we do a lot of work with corporates in seeing how they can build open innovation ecosystems and leverage the nimbleness, agility, and of startups to solve compelling problems which corporates can't solve by themselves. So I am on the dot, Vaibhav, and I will now be happy to take questions. I hope, I think there are about 30 odd people still on the call. I hope none of them has dropped off to sleep. And thank you for listening to me patiently over the last half an hour. Happy to take any questions you have.
Thanks a lot, Mr. It was really fantastic to hear it from you. And obviously, because I wanted to speak, I wanted to you to speak about T-Hub, and that you did in the end. Otherwise, I would have pointed out maybe speak a few lines about T-Hub, because usually everyone would be eager to hear that from you. But we do have questions. So I see Ashwin is asking how to reach out to potential customers in a B2C business, solving the distribution problem in the initial days. So probably from your experience, either at T-Hub or otherwise, you can speak.
Sure. So I think B2C, there are multiple ways. So depending on what you're building. So one part is obviously you can get onto marketplaces. So when I say marketplace, I'm talking about the likes of Amazon, Flipkart, etc., etc. The other is if there are, for example, there are, for some types of startups where, you could potentially work with communities. What I mean by communities is, for example, a large residential complex of apartments, etc. So whatever you call RWAs, etc. So one part is as I said, one part is the marketplaces. The second is, these working out through communities. The third one, which is something which I'm sure will start picking up steam and momentum over time, is this new, all of you are familiar with UPI. There's another initiative called ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce, which is also being driven by the government. It's still lots of, basically they're building platforms where, any small entity which is either doing B2B or B2C can get on. And then there's a third party, logistic fulfillment agencies, etc. Early days, lots of glitches to be ironed out, but that's another interesting way to get to your consumers. Yeah.
Thank you. Avishma.
We have another question from Manthan Goel. If you have an idea how to validate it before you start the execution process.
Talk to as many people as you can. So first of all, whatever is the idea, let's take an example. You are thinking of building something or to improve quality control in a manufacturing setup. Go and talk to as many people, to understand what their existing problems are, what is the lacunae in the existing way they are trying to solve that problem, right? And then you can sketch out your solution. You can just, create a wireframe, show it to them, etc., and tell them, if I come up with this and I can make it work, what would you like to, do you think this is something which would be relevant to you? And I didn't mention one thing in the deck: learn how to network and network quite, fearlessly, aggressively, uh, just short of shamelessly. Yeah. So show up at events, talk to a lot of people, right? People are generally speaking, most people are more than happy to help in terms of, if you say, listen, I'm trying to do this and I need you to go and talk to customers, because, if you can, most of the time you start building something, isolation without talking to users. And then, it takes you 1 year to build something, and then you go out and tell people, and then people say, listen, I'll also give you one more simple framework for you to think about. I call it VED, vital, essential, and desirable, right? So what is VED here in this context? Whether what you're building is something which is going to be something which is absolutely required, right? Without which, whoever is the consumer, whether it's a business or an individual consumer, cannot survive. Essential is something which is, required, okay? But I'm willing to make some compromises in some form. But desirable is something which is, nice to have. If, all of us would like to have, for example, or, if you take transportation, right? All of us would like to have a Rolls Royce, but, it's not practical sometimes to have a Rolls Royce, both from a cost and the quality in the type of our roads, right? But you need some form of transportation. So it's an essential thing. And in many cases, it's probably where, for example, if public transport is non-existent, having your own form of mobility is an absolute requirement. I just give you an oversimplified example just to illustrate the vital, essential, desirable. So ask yourself whether whatever you're building, which of these three categories does it fall into? Vital, essential, and desirable. It may be vital for some, maybe essential for some, maybe desirable for others. So just think about this and you can create a nice little grid and play around, but talk to people. Okay, talk to people who are potentially your consumers, potentially your investors, to suss out the idea and see whether the idea has legs in it.
Yeah, thanks, MSR. So there are some other questions, but I also have a question, and I would like to use this opportunity to take that question. So I would like to ask you, so given your experiences, Hyderabad is obviously is a fantastic city, and it has grown, and T-Hub, it has made it more popular in terms of startups. So which other cities or which other places in India you see there is a potential, and probably something like T-Hub can be replicated in other entrepreneurial ecosystems within India, hopefully. So do you see other cities having such potential and something like that
Obviously,
can come up?
the large cities, right? I mean, obviously, when you talk about this thing, obviously Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, type of thing, they do not have a physical infrastructure like T-Hub, and also an institutional mechanism where you created a public-private partnership. So a lot of what has happened has largely been through the private enterprise and so on, right? But now I think we are starting to see many of the state governments have woken up to the potential of startups as a engine for job creation. So, for example, Kerala is doing amazing work. So is Tamil Nadu, right? Gujarat has already started something, and even some of the smaller states, even some of the states in the northeast, etc., have woken up to this possibility of. See, everyone I think is obviously concerned that this demographic dividend we have will last only for a finite period of time, and we need to create more jobs. Right? And startups can be a powerful engine of growth. So, of course, some of the jobs which have got created with startups, for example, this whole gig worker thing, right, may not necessarily be the most uh, ideal thing from a social perspective, but it has created some form of jobs to people who otherwise didn't have, real access to any kind of economic opportunity.
Yeah. So because ideally that's what, from a policy angle, that's what I was thinking. Otherwise, if a lot of startups get created, just say, let's say in Hyderabad, probably a lot of people from other cities would like to move to Hyderabad to work in the
Now
startup
starting to
ecosystem.
see a lot of action in
Yeah.
second tier, in terms of cities like for example, Jaipur.
Good to know.
On, right?
Thanks.
Jaipur,
Yeah, Vishnu, please go ahead.
No, it's interesting because actually once T-Hub has come into the picture and everyone started noticing the kind of impact T-Hub has created on the Hyderabad ecosystem and the Telangana ecosystem, every state and city, at least I remember, has started approaching T-Hub, trying to understand how to replicate the same model.
Yeah, doing
This
something.
work
Yeah,
has
at
been
least
in
thinking about
progress for
something.
many years, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take the next question from Shravan Kumar Sharma. What is the best way to connect with pre-seed investor or angel investor? We are building a tech platform and prototype will be ready in a week.
Okay, so if your prototype is going to be ready in a week, you should have started this a long time ago. You shouldn't have waited till you got to this stage. But having said that, I think there are a lot of. Which city are you from?
Probably you can type in your city,
Shravan
Shravan.
Kumar Sharma.
But it's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Please go ahead, because that's
So
how it
depending
will
on
be
which
going.
city you are, see, there are nowadays the number of events which happen are kind of dime a dozen, right?
Hello.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a PhD student. I'm in the US, but my co-founders,
Okay.
they are in Mumbai.
Okay.
Startup
So
is
basically
being
Mumbai you are talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
So Bombay though is just full of events which happen all the time. Yeah, all the big VCs are based out of Bombay. So you just have to go in. There is bodies like TIE. There's another one called Team. The entrepreneurs of Bombay, etc. So lots of events. Just show up, network, and be able to deliver the proverbial elevator pitch, which is in 1 or 2 minutes. You should be able to articulate clearly what is it that you're trying to build, whose problem are you solving, and how will it scale, and how will somebody who invests in your business figure out how to make money. If you can answer these questions in 2 minutes, believe me, you will get an audience.
Fantastic.
There are
Thanks. By the way,
there is the Indian Angel Network, there's Mumbai Angels, there's several angel networks which you can, all of these are accessible online. You can get in touch, but just, try and meet as many people as you can in person if possible. That will be more helpful than just doing a Zoom call. It's always helpful get to meet someone in person.
Yeah. And by the way, we had a co-founder from our ventures fund as well in one of our tech talks. and they are really in good touch with IT Bombay community. So if one of your co-founders is from IT Bombay, probably he would already be in a network. So
So again,
yeah,
your alumni network will have several people who are
exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. So that's
uh,
easier to get into touch with. Yeah, yeah. All right.
We also
Thanks.
have this 2-day e-summit, entrepreneurship summit that's hosted
Yeah,
on
we
campus.
have.
A lot of entrepreneurs come on campus directly, and many connections and investments happen on campus itself.
Okay. So
That's
yeah, he's an
great.
ITB alum, Shravan. So you are an ITB alum. You can just write to me, and I can connect to any of them. It's not a problem. As simple as that. Yeah. All right. Okay. So there is another question from Madhu. I will not go into the details. He is working on the pharma skill development, and he's asking, are there any funding agencies for it in India? Although the questions look very specific, but maybe you would like to,
I think I'll need
say
to
a few words.
understand a little bit more about what you're, what
Yeah.
you're exactly building. But there is growing interest in, you said pharma, right?
Pharma skill development.
I know. So clearly, with anything to do with healthcare, I think there are specific healthcare focused funds. So depending on what you're solving for, I think we can probably, I don't know whether Vaibhava, I can probably connect offline and understand a little bit more and then suggest what can be done.
Yeah. So, by the way, in case if you would like to get in touch with MSR, I'm pretty sure you always reach out to him on LinkedIn, and if he's interested in your idea, probably he can help you out
No,
in
I'll respond.
some other way.
Vishma knows I'll
Yeah.
respond. I'm slightly slow because I'm quite old, but I'll respond.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Vishma, please go ahead.
We have a question from Prem. Would like to understand what is lacking in our startup ecosystem in India to nurture generative AI startup and deep search startups, which are not getting enough backing from venture capitals in India, while USA could produce Perplexity, Character.ai, etc.
So there is, in fact, just today somebody sent me a report on Gen AI. Let me just give me a second. I will tell you where is the report from. And I'll just read out some numbers. I haven't had a chance. I just flipped through it a couple of times, in a couple of hours ago. Just give me a second. I'll tell you the source. This is a report by NASSCOM. It's a 72-page report. I think it's downloadable from the NASSCOM website, and I can possibly share it with Avishma. She can send it out. We have, as of now, just a second, I'm just putting it up. It's taking a little while. So the Gen AI startup ecosystem has grown by about 3.6%, 3.6x, and about 758 million in funding, according to this report. And the rest of the report, I'm waiting for it to open. I'll share this with you. 1 minute.
Sure, MSR. I'll pass it on.
Yeah. So I think in India, I think, for us to build an open AI type of thing will be challenging because of the kind of capital which has been raised. I think our focus will be much more on applications. I think we'll have a few things coming up, but we'll have a lot more on the app layer type of thing. Yeah.
I think that's how it is, but it's developing in
Also,
India
by the
is
way,
even
now
trying.
everyone talk. I mean, I was talking to a friend who went to a VC event, who's a VC himself. He went to a VC event in Singapore a couple of weeks back. He said there were about 100 VCs from India, and everyone said we are in deep tech. Okay.
Yeah. And people are actually doing, in fact, a lot of people are also trying to build, indigenous AI systems, for example, in Hindi and other
Yeah,
respective languages,
a lot of
which is interesting. Yeah.
Indian language stuff.
Yeah, which is pretty fascinating. Yeah. All
So
right. So I think we are almost there.
there are
So
just quickly, I think since we are
yeah, sure.
there
Please,
are
please.
now about 135 Gen AI startups in India and about 4+ foundational models. Right, and some of the companies, you'll know Sarvam, Krutim,
Kurtrim Sarvam, these are quite doing well
no
in
need.
the regional language models. No, fantastic. So yeah, I don't see any other questions per se. So Avishma, would you like to say a final vote of thanks for MSR, although you know him already? So yeah, it's better that you do it. Yeah.
It's not going to be a vote of thanks. I think, given how our this session went, I think MSR is going to constantly be connected. So I'm not going to say thanks yet for overall, but thank you so much, MSR, for joining us and taking the time today. Really appreciate your insights, and I think it's coming from you. Actually, it gives a lot more weight because you've been in this space for many years, and especially, I mean, like I said in the introduction, although you're known now because of TEHUB per se, but you have been in the entrepreneurship space for so many years. You've learned the lessons firsthand. So it's a combination of, your firsthand experience, like you've shared, and also looking at so many tens and hundreds of startups in the last few years as the ecosystem builder. So getting these lessons from you is basically like extracting a 30-minute knowledge from like 30 years of experience, which we are forever, grateful for. So thank you so much, MSR.
Thank you. Vaibhav. Thank you, Avish.
All right.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
Thanks a lot, MSR, for
all
your
the
time.
participants for listening. And Avishma, as you know, happy to help in any form. Feel free to reach.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you again.